And for those of you that are familiar with the Wednesday webinar, you realise I am not David Bailey. My name is Mike Cowley-Freeman from PDS, and my role within PDS has been to support these events as we've run them through the weeks and months. And I'm really pleased that I'm able to present the event today, because we're introducing a lady called Angela Mack from Essex Policing, who I had the pleasure of hearing present at the HeForShe launch of the 5th annual report, which took place in December of last year. I'll get Angela to talk to you in a moment about HeForShe, but when I was listening to Angela and hearing how she is using the different aspects of Microsoft 365 to support the amazing work that she's doing within the force, it really struck me as that this is one of these use cases where people could look at and think, right, okay, we know there's some wonderful operational frontline opportunities that 365 brings, but actually there's some really important stuff that 365 can support that goes on for police staff and police officers away from the front line. So Angela, if I can bring you onto the screen, and just want to say hi and really ask you, what were your challenges when you started to look at 365 and when you were looking for a solution?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. As Mike said, and I'll talk about the challenges, but my name's Angela and I work for Essex Police, and I'm the tactical lead for HeForShe. Just very quickly, Mike, I don't want to steer away from what we're discussing, but to talk about the challenges, just very briefly, if you're not aware of HeForShe and what it is, it's an international movement and it all focuses around gender equality. So my role in the organisation is to be the tactical lead, to drive HeForShe, to educate people on HeForShe, and to try and, I will use the word wrangle, a group of 62 ambassadors and champions to try and get everybody moving in the right direction. So I will hopefully share my screen. I'll just put it into present mode. For somebody who's talking about 365, you will have to bear with me if there are any technical challenges, because I think one of my key points that I'm going to mention is I'm not an IT expert, and I have learnt by asking others and through my own research and the wonderful tool that is Google as well. So hopefully my screen is being displayed. So my challenges that I had. So my ambassadors and my champions, they were keen to do more, but they were unsure of what they could do, where to find the resources, or any further support that might be available. And this basically resulted in me being inundated with emails and having to explain the same thing over and over and over again. And HeForShe is, in addition to my full-time role, it is not my full-time role. So I was finding it hard to manage my time. Another concern, another challenge was around duplication, mixed messages across the organisation. And I have just referenced, for anyone else who's in the police, a very large volume of emails that we receive on a regular basis, and important messages that were being missed. So they were the key challenges there, Mike.
That's brilliant. So from your perspective, now that you've identified the challenges, how did you actually go about addressing the challenge and looking for solutions?
So for me, it was trying to work out what was already available to me within the organisation. And speaking really honestly, I didn't know much about Office 365 at all. I knew about Teams. I think everybody knew about Teams after COVID or during COVID. It suddenly came into its own, and we went from doing conference calls round a table, speaking into a speakerphone, which now when you look at, it's just really crazy that we actually did that, to using Teams and becoming more and more au fait with it. I remember when it first came out, we used Teams Lite, which, looking at the functionality now compared to then, is a massive improvement. So I very much wanted to know what else was available to me, which is why I had a little look at 365, and I consulted with some other people within the organisation around what the best method might be. So I've got different areas, but I think, Mike, we're probably going to discuss as we go along, or do you want me to talk about the different software I've used?
Well, I think if you can start talking through, and then if I can, I'll just chuck in the odd question, if that's all right.
Of course, and you say if you can, because I talk a lot, but I will let you in, I promise. So if we look at the first one, so I've talked about email and talked about Outlook. I will talk about these in slightly more detail as I go through them. Another one I use, as I've also referenced, is Teams. MS Forms, I'm obsessed. I will talk about that again in more detail very shortly. Viva Engage, previously Yammer, is a really key tool for our organisation. MS Lists, I didn't even know lists existed until I reached out and talked to people. I did get it described to me as being Excel on steroids. I think it's absolutely brilliant and really easy to use. And actually, for me, I find it easier than Excel. And then the last point was SharePoint out of the functionality.
Brilliant, thank you. And SharePoint's a really interesting one I'd like to talk to a little bit more depth, because I know we've got an event coming up tomorrow around SharePoint, which I think we've got about 130 people from policing attending. So I'd be really interested to hear about that. But back to you.
Okay, it's going to be a surprise what the order is. So it might come on to, there we go. It was almost like we planned this, Mike, almost like we planned it. So SharePoint. So Essex Police have moved over from a previous sort of intranet that they used, which was run off Magnolia, and they've moved over to SharePoint. SharePoint with the two functions around how we store and process data and sharing detail, but also having it as sort of a key intranet page. So I was given some training. I'll be honest, I wasn't given a great deal of training, right. But I was given enough training, and the person who trained me gave me that confidence and believed in me to then actually start to work it out myself. So one key point I would say about SharePoint is it's really easy to use, it's really accessible. And actually one really positive thing about the crossover with all the 365 functions is if you kind of know how to do something in one area, it crosses over into another. So you're never suddenly just, oh, what is this? You're always going to have a baseline of knowledge. And that's what the person who trained me gave me, was that baseline, and then he gave me that confidence to go and explore it further myself. So I created a HeForShe SharePoint page, and the idea was to make it a one-stop shop for all things HeForShe. So this was going to reduce the amount of emails that I received, hopefully, and it did, because I wouldn't have to keep responding and keep repeating myself over and over and over again about what HeForShe was, around the role of an ambassador. So I could put everything on there. What I could then do was I could use a different functionality within SharePoint. I created an ambassador testimony section, and I could use like the bit where you expand the text and make it smaller so everyone fit on one page and they could explore it as they needed to. I uploaded links to gender equality toolkits that Essex Police had created that I have borrowed with pride and we use in Essex. And I'd also managed to upload both newsletters around the policing response to HeForShe, but also from HeForShe as a whole throughout the UN. So I was able to put all this resource into one hit, and I was also able to have a page which, if anyone came to it thinking I want to speak to a HeForShe ambassador or champion, who do I go to? They knew just by looking at that. So it served both functions as far as I'm concerned. It gave out the information about ambassadors, but also it gave people somewhere they could access. And this is what it looks like. This is the very basic part of it. So I managed to create different tabs across the top here. And just because of the purposes, obviously this is going to be made public. I haven't got screenshots of detail on here, but that's how it started, and then we progressed from there.
And I think that's a really key point. You've got to start somewhere, haven't you? You could try and keep going to make it as perfect as possible, but actually the functionality and then the access that it then brings to people is the real motivator to get it started, and then it can evolve as time goes on.
100%, and I've continued to explore it, develop it, evolve it. So I don't know how clearly you can read the text because it's quite small on my screen and it might be small on yours, but here is actually Essex Police became White Ribbon accredited. So even though it wasn't technically HeForShe, it was linked to HeForShe. So I then put another page in the background there, and then it expands to show the good work that was being done by the force to support White Ribbon even as well.
Excellent, thank you. So that's SharePoint. What else are you using?
Oh, MS Forms. So yes, this I think this is absolutely brilliant. So when I first came onto Forms, I had, in all honesty, no real idea what I was doing with it. I think that's probably going to be a theme that's going to come out as we walk through each bit, that I'm not an IT expert, I'm not a guru, but it is really, really easy and accessible to use. So for me, a number of our ambassadors and champions wanted to be more involved, but they didn't really know how. So that was a challenge, but I wanted to dig into that detail and really, really understand it. So I thought, what's the best way to do it? Are the best ways to do a survey? And I know historically as an organisation, we've used different types of survey, like SurveyMonkey and loads of different bits. But I wanted to be in control of it. I wanted to be able to set it how I wanted it. So I wanted people to be able to be anonymous if they wanted to, give me the details if they wanted to, expand on things. I wanted to be able to them to give them scores out of 1 to 5. How well are we doing? Where are the gaps of knowledge? And the beauty of MS Forms, and I don't know if I continue to say it, or this is the reason I created it, that's coming up on the screen, was it will take the information and it will translate it for you, and it will put it into charts, graphs. It will tell you like the positive responses, the negative responses, what that looks like overall. You can export it into Excel. You can do so much with it that really informs you. And then once you get it into Excel, you can filter it down, and then you know who you need to go back to. So as I've put on here, I've created this survey. I had a total of 10 questions. I think policing in general, we can sometimes have a bit of survey fatigue. So I wanted to keep it quite basic and just get the key elements that I wanted to explore. And providing a rating to free text responses, but the rating side of it is important if you want figures and charts and graphs at a glance rather than picking through the free text.
Brilliant. And I think, if I remember rightly, in the last presentation that I saw of you, you had a bit of a demonstration of the sort of information that you're getting. I don't know if you included it in this one.
Oh. It surprises me what the slides are looking like. I haven't got the examples of the charts. I know I did remove them, but this is kind of what the screen would look like. So this is what I was asking people. And again, if you can't read it, it's just your general detail about who you are, how do you rate your knowledge level. I had no shame in doing a plug for my HeForShe SharePoint page by asking people if they'd visited it. I was really disappointed as one of my respondents said no, so I had to try and get back to them and encourage them to go and see it. But I needed to understand what I needed to do for the force. So I know the next slide doesn't have charts on it, Mike, but it does bring that data together. You can have bar graphs, pie charts, and you can really use it to serve you how you need it to.
And I think that's the beauty of it. You know, if you're a visual person and you prefer to see your results in pie charts or bar charts or graphs, it really does help to bring that data alive. I'm interrupting you enough. I'll let you move on to the next area.
Oh, you're fine. I'm actually letting you interrupt, which is a first for me, Mike. So moving on to lists. So lists is a relatively new function for me, and I have used it both for HeForShe and in my day job. So if I talk through what I needed from lists. So as I said earlier, more advanced version of Excel to create a spreadsheet. So for me, it's helping me, I mean, the clue's in the name, it's helping you to build a list, and it's helping you to understand where your different priorities are, what's happening in those different areas, what's in progress, what's completed, who it's assigned to, but it lays it out in a really user-friendly format. And I find if I use Excel, I'm busy colour coding and I want to make it pretty, but lists will make it pretty for you. And lists will enable you to assign a task to somebody, and it will automatically email them and tell them that they've got that task. And then it automatically emails you when they've completed it. So actually, again, if I reference back to the beginning, I know that's emails, but it's just letting you know it's there. It's not information you then have to store somewhere else. It's all held in that place. There's an automate function. Unfortunately, Essex haven't turned on the automate function for everybody, so I'm not able to play with that as of yet. But that might be maybe taking it outside of the HeForShe arena, taking it into your day-to-day tasks. So I'm a manager of a team. I might task out something to one of my staff, and actually I'll give them a deadline of, I'll be nice, they can have 4 weeks. I want them to be reminded 2 weeks before that this deadline is approaching. So using the automate function, it will automatically email them 2 weeks before and let them know. So that just takes something away from what I need to think about, and also what they need to think about when they're trying to plan their time. So it's a really, really important function. I think one of the reasons Essex hasn't used it at the moment is due to actually, if someone goes off sick, what then happens to those emails and that function? They need to work out the bigger picture. But there are workarounds. So I was introduced to something called JSON coding that I'd never heard of by a very, very clever person in Kent. I'm not going to take the credit. And she's got it down to a fine art. And using JSON coding, it can automatically color code for you. So if the deadline is 6 weeks away, it can go green. Then when 4 weeks is approaching, it can go amber. And then when it's overdue, it can go red. And it will automatically do all of that for you without you having to worry about it. And there's also formulas that you can use. If you want the due date to be 60 days from the implementation date, you can add that formula and automatically populate that for you and keep it going. And I don't know how many people have used the formulas on Excel with equals, brackets, plus, minus, today, commas, everything. It can be really overwhelming. But I found the formulas that you could use in lists was so much more simple and actually made sense to me. So
if I can just say that's a really interesting point, the fact that, you know, and you have referred to it on a number of occasions throughout the presentation, that you're not a technical wizard with all of this, and it's very much either asking the right question or finding out yourself. It is incredibly user friendly, isn't it? It really is. And you can, I mean, I know you can Google for like Excel and other stuff as well, but you can really, it just makes sense. It's in plain English, I think is the best way to describe it, Mike. Yeah. Brilliant. So the screenshot here is just a very, very basic list. So I've done my very best redacting skills. This again feeds into the point, I'm not an IT whiz. So for me, this was the different commands in Essex Police, who the leads were, the status, the priorities, the start dates. This was really important for me because as an organisation, we've got a real focus on HeForShe, on violence against women and girls. And we really need to, I need to be held to account as a tactical lead, but also the chief officers for Essex want to know what's going on. So I can share this list with them, I can give them permission, they can drill it down into different areas and they know what the organisation is doing. Excellent. So just whilst you're doing this, a very quick question that has come up, and it applies to the list and I think most of the apps as well. And the question is, does the info remain within the apps, for example, in the lists? Conscious that some info on Teams disappears after a certain length of time. And I think that's due to retention policies. I might be wrong, but are you aware of any issues with regards how long the information stays in the lists? Well, this will be a question that I'm happy to take away and find the answer out to. So I'll start by saying I haven't noticed anything. My day job is actually within professional standards, within PSD, and I know that within Essex, like to be mentioned on the question, that it can disappear. So it will say it's been removed under your organisational policy after a certain period of time. So it might be, first of all, that different organisations have different policies around information and weeding processes. So it might be worth finding out actually how does that fit in your organisation and what's already in place. And I know from a PSD perspective, we were looking actually what does that look like, because our counter-corruption unit might need to dig back further than those 6 months. So what does that look like? But I'm not sure if there's a sort of a generic, this is how long the information is kept for. All I can say is really my experience that I haven't lost any data. Excellent. And Vicky's very kindly put her email address into her questions. So when we do get an answer, Vicky, we will come back to you. Right, Angela, back over to you. Okay, thank you. So Viva Engage, this is, you might have heard of it as Yammer, you might use it in your own forces. It's basically the police's answer to social media, and we do use it a lot within Essex. So we have a number of different pages, for want of a better phrase, that Viva Engage uses. So we have a force wide Viva Engage, and that's obviously everybody can communicate on that. We'll have certain things that go out. For example, our chief instigated hashtag Thank You Thursday, probably about a year or so ago. So if they want to thank certain members of staff and encourage others to thank others, you use the hashtag, you can search on it in the same way you would other social media channels. Each department, if they want, can create their own Viva Engage page, and they can use that. They can either lock it down just within the department, and they'll have an admin function so they can accept people and they can join it and view it.
Or for example, again, I'll reference me being in PSD. We have a PSD page, but actually we're going to talk about changes within the department, and we don't necessarily need other people to see that. So that will be locked down and monitored by the admin as to who has access to it. So I have a HeForShe, I was about to call it Yammer again, Viva Engage page. And as like I said, you have one admin responsible. So this is our HeForShe page, tells you how many members that you have. There's a brief description around what it is and gives further info, and you can share thoughts, ideas, discussions. You can link to other pages. So if there's, for example, International Women's Day, I can link to that through our women's network, and you can promote on various different pages. Just another example of how it's used within Essex Police is our contact management command has a really good, really strong Viva Engage page. It's got about, I think it's about 700 people on it, and actually they will use it to cut down again on email traffic. So they've recently had discussions, it might seem really minor, but about the chairs in the room. And for somebody who's sat on a chair for 8-10 hours a day, it's really quite an impactful thing that the chairs are fit for purpose and comfortable. Instead of sending around multiple emails, they can upload pictures, they can promote discussion, they can get views, feedback, all of that just by using one platform instead of having excessive amount of emails.
And I think that actually just touches on a question that came through in the chat around that whole, how is this impacting and helping with regards to the volume of emails? The question was, you mentioned lots of emails and keeping your workload down. What were the demand overheads and how did the solutions contribute to reducing them? So how, and I suppose that goes into the benefits, you know, what are you seeing as a result of using these tools and how is it helping you?
So I think just using that example with the Viva Engage, having that as a platform around the communication, I think first of all you need the buy-in from the staff, because if no one's following the page, there's no point in using it. But when you know the majority of your command are on it, and actually instead of having all these email conversations, you could potentially send one that said, just so you know, there's a new thread that's come on around the chairs. If you want to get involved and put your opinion forward, please join it. So I think that it definitely reduces the overall, I said, group emails that you get. If using HeForShe, if I revert back to the Teams chat, which I think is coming next, revert forward to Teams, it's actually, I just put a message out to my ambassadors saying, I need help with this. Is anyone free to help me? Rather than everybody, and some people might just have no capacity whatsoever. They can't take on anything else. They don't want another email from me saying, can I help with this? They don't want to feel bad because they can't. But actually going in the Teams chat is just reducing that. And I think as well, when you're looking at storage, at retention, I know at one point my sent items in my email were probably about 40,000 because I'd never deleted them. Well, I'm actually slowing down my system by using that as well, when actually these conversations could be better had on other platforms.
Excellent, thank you. So Teams, how's it? I
think this is the last one you'll be pleased to hear as well. So initially I created a Teams chat for the ambassadors and champions. So this was just a bog standard chat, added everybody. It also helped me keep tabs on who my ambassadors and champions are. And again, I know you can do that through an email group, but for me, I do have an email group, which I do very rarely use anymore. The process of going in, amending the people in the email group, signing into one system, adding another, it was really just drawn out. But me being able just to have the Teams chat and just click plus, add somebody, remove somebody else, share the chat, have control over how much history I shared was a massive positive for me as well. They can also see at a glance when new people are added, so they can say, oh, it's really good that Joe Bloggs has now become an ambassador. I'll link out with him, he's in my command and we can have a chat what we're doing, rather than me adding somebody in the background to an email group. We've then created a Teams channel on the back of it, and for those of you familiar with the Office 365 package, this will then allow, and I'm hoping I've got a picture, there we go, this will allow you to integrate and link other areas. So you'll be able to have your SharePoint page, your list, you'll be able to have links to forms, so it can be everything linking in together and they know where to find it. You can share files, as I'm sure people are aware, through a Teams channel. So in your files tab, which I'm hoping is up there, I could add any documents, if we've had a meeting, I could add any minutes to it as well. And again, it's just there, it's just all really accessible and available, and it's not a case of getting an email from me with the minutes, storing it and then forgetting where you stored it. It's all there and it's all ready for you.
Brilliant. No, thank you so very much for sharing all of this work that you've done with us, Angela. If you could, I suppose, look back over your time using 365 and how it's helping you with HeForShe. I suppose, what has been the key benefit for you? And the other part of the question is, so what's next?
So I think the key benefit has been organisation. I like to think of myself as someone who is quite organised, but the use of lists, I think, was a game changer for me, especially when out of the blue I was asked by chief officers to submit an update and a report about what we were doing. I was able to literally go into lists, have all the work streams. I was also to look for any crossover and provide a comprehensive report very quickly. So I think that was the game changer. And what's next? Well, that's a really good question, Mike, because I feel the world is my oyster and I'm ready to take on the next challenge. So whatever presents itself, I will take on board with 365.
Fantastic. It's brilliant to see you again. And as you were talking, I was just transported back to that session in December. You know, the way that you have embraced the opportunities that this technology can give to develop new ways of working, for me, is incredibly inspirational. I know, talking to people in the room on that day, they were saying, all right, we really need to look at how the different opportunities can help us. Obviously, appreciate forces are at different places with regards to their rollout of technology, but I really am so grateful for you showcasing how we can really work moving forward. So my thanks to Angela for giving up her time to present today. Normal service will be resumed next week. Mr. Bailey will be back, you'll be pleased to know, and it'll run very, very smoothly. But he would kill me if I didn't sort of finish off the session with just a couple of announcements. So as you may recall, or you may be aware, registrations are now live for the Police Digital Summit in 2024. For those that went last year in Brighton, it was an absolutely enormous and successful event, and we're looking to see how we can take it even further. So please use the QR code on the screen to scan, register for your places. If you're from a commercial side, you're thinking about registering for a stand, if you can register there as well, and then the team will be in contact in the very near future. And that is just one of the major events that we are running and supporting going across the year. So if you're interested in any of the events, and I'll put up a slide about that in a moment, you have your business engagement managers who are covering the forces around England and Wales. They will be able to put you in touch with the right people at the right time to get you the right information. So please use the opportunity to contact one of the team. We're always looking for feedback and response, and you want to get in touch with us, and we would be amiss not to use the technology available if we didn't promote it. So again, if you want to get in contact with the business engagement team, please use the QR code that's on the screen. It will trigger a form, and then we can then respond to you as quickly as possible with the right information. As I mentioned, we have a number of events coming up. We still have the Wednesday webinar series that's continuing on. I mentioned also that we have an event that's taking place tomorrow around SharePoint. Really well sort of engagement from members of the forces. And I think we've got 120 plus people there who are going to be talking about the opportunities of SharePoint. We're going to be hearing from forces as they tell us about how they've integrated SharePoint. But as you can see on the screen, we've got the events already planned through to September. More will be added, so please feel free to get in touch and find out how you can become involved. And as always, we want to hear your feedback. Maybe not so much about this one because this wasn't Dave, but in all seriousness, we really do want to hear how you enjoy these webinars, what you'd like us to cover, and how you'd like us to take things forward. So again, please use the webinar, the QR code there. Let us know what you think about the webinars, and we'll be happy to help. So just want to finish again by thanking Angela for a fantastic session around Essex Police's use of SharePoint and all the different aspects of 365. We're very grateful to her for her time. Thank you all for joining this, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.